Hello everybody and welcome to my channel History and Guys, and today I want to show you how I built my Saga character. And you might have seen some of it already in some of the shorts or on the photos I posted on Instagram, but I thought the way I built it, I think it's slightly different to how a lot of other people do it, and hence I thought it might be worthwhile to share it with you, because I think it's a fairly easy to reproduce way of building my character, and it's also quite fun actually to build it like that. And so let's get started. Now, before we get into the nitty-gritty details, let's just share some fundamental ideas about how I want to build this character. So the first aspect is it needs to be playable, so no steep curves or steep slopes. It needs to be transportable because I want to use it in the club, because one of the issues we have at the club is like most of the Saga terrain is actually privately owned terrain, so not going at the club, everybody brings it when he plays, and if the person who's playing doesn't have terrain, we have to improvise. But the third aspect is it needs to be look good enough so it doesn't break the immersion. And it needs to have a certain level of flexibility. And in an ideal world, it would be also usable for other games as well, at least to a certain degree. Now with Saga, we have the specific situation that we have sizes for the terrain. We have large size terrain and normal size terrain. And the large size terrain is 12 inches maximum, 8 inches on the shortest piece at the least. And for the normal size one, it's 8 inches and 6 inches. So we need to keep that in mind. And in order to maintain the proper sizes, the first thing I did is actually I built some templates. And to build those templates is super easy. You just take cardboard, measure it out, and then you have two templates. This one is for the large one. And the good thing is because the minimum size for the one large size is the longest side of the medium one, you can just use those two, put them on top of each other, and you have the right size. Very easy, very convenient, and you don't need to break out your measuring tape all the time when you're building your terrain. And then the next aspect obviously is what materials do we use? Well, there are obviously a lot of different materials that you can use to craft terrain. A lot of people use MDF as a base and then build up from there. Some people use styrofoam for building terrain, and that works especially well if you want to build larger hills, and then they scale rather light as well. I chose a slightly different approach. It's not super new because there are some other bigger channels that have used similar materials, or at least some of the materials I'm going to show you. But I think the way I use it is a little bit different and worth showing, especially because it gives in this specific Saga content. What is also important to note is that a lot of people, when they build Saga terrain, they have basically those bases, like this one, for example. And then instead of keeping it flat, they have smaller holes, like for sub bases. And then they put like all the different pieces for terrain, so rocks for example for rocky terrain, or small pieces of ruins for ruins, swamp for swamp pieces for swamp. They put on washers, on car washers, so metal discs, and basically put it on top of that and then insert them loosely onto the terrain. And that's certainly a very nice option of doing it. I know a clubmate of mine has multiple sets of Saga terrain built like that, and it's very nice really, so it's definitely an option. I didn't want to go that way for certain reasons, for example because I think if you build slightly larger pieces you can also use it as scatter terrain for other games, and also because variety is the spice of life, I think. So I went in a little bit different route, and I will show you how. And one example for that is, for example, my swamps are still not super large, but they are larger, so they don't look just like a small puddle. And I can put them on top like this. So this is basically the idea. Like you have a base, and then you can put anything on top to stand in for, like a swamp, a ruin. Okay, this is too large really, so it shows you what the limitations of it are as well, because this one doesn't really fit on the lower piece. But if I want to have a ruin, for example, I can just use this wall. And this wall, and then everybody pretty certainly understands what it is. And the nice thing about it compared to sabos is, if you take the pieces out from the sabo, it looks a bit weird now because suddenly you have this metal washer out. Here you can just move it around. If the group needs to move to this edge, to this front edge, you just take the wall, move it back. It's still the same terrain, it just looks slightly different. And and you can use like proper stones, for example, to put on top of this material, and then you have like proper rocks rather than some other stuff. You can do the same with the warranted foot mats. I chose to make them a bit smaller than a lot of the fields that people make, so that they fit on the bases, on the bigger pieces. And of course you have the drawback that you do see. I will show it to you again with this slightly larger piece. If you put it on top, you do see the edges. It's not a perfect solution, but it is a very useful solution because I think it's a very good compromise between immersion on the one hand and playability and usability and transportability as well, because this is not super heavy either. This whole tray, I think the content, which is a full set for Saga really, weighs about, I would say, 2 kilos or something like that. So enough of talking, let's get to the crafting and I will show you how I built this. And I promise you it's very fast, it's very easy to replicate. Okay, now let's have a look at what kind of materials do we actually use for the building process. One of the most important materials is this acrylic caulking. Acrylic caulking has been a staple for terrain building for quite a long time, so this is not really the wonder weapon that I'm going to employ. Just a couple of words about this material. First of all, make sure that you can paint over it. Which is the difference to the silicone caulking that is also in widespread use. You need to have so you can paint over it, otherwise it doesn't work. Secondly, it comes in different colors. Color is normally not really a concern since we paint over it anyways, unless you can get a base color that already suits as a base color. That's obviously nice and saves the step. But the consistency might change even from the same product. For example, from this Saga company, they do have a transparent one, and that seems to be a bit more gel-like than this one, which is more pastos. It doesn't matter in the end, just be aware that there are differences. Now, what is a bit more unusual is this one. This is a vinyl tiling. So normally you use it to tile floor spaces with it. It's a very cheap product. You can get about a square meter of tiles, which is I think 11 tiles in a package for 15 euros approximately, at least here in Germany from a DIY store. This one is a bit specific because it does have a self-adhesive side, which is black, looks like this. This is still a bit sticky if you see it. Now, originally I thought this sticky surface would be very useful to throw material on it. I have to report to you it's not useful for our purposes, because it will probably stick in place when you glue it down on the flooring and it stays stable against each other and just gets pressure from top. But if you throw loose material on it, it won't really stick, at least not in the amount that we need it. So forget about using this kind of property, but it's still a very nice material for our purposes because it doesn't warp, because it doesn't take water. Water is always a source for warping, and maybe if the material on top contracts, but then even then you can just bend it back, and that's a nice thing. The second aspect is it's reasonably light, and it's very thin, so it's like slightly more than a millimeter, I think 1.3 or 1.4 millimeters. It does come in different strengths, so some of the vinyl tilings, especially the slightly more expensive one, is a bit thicker, but you don't need it. Thin is good for us because it creates a very small bevel when you get on the terrain. The other aspect that is very nice about this terrain, and this is just a piece of junk that's left from crafting, is something I want to show you now. You can cut it with a crafting knife, like this. Just take a crafting knife, and you can cut it. And you don't even need to cut through it, because it will break. The bottom part is rather brittle. So if you cut through the top part, and I will show you in a moment, you can just break it. And similar, like you can break MDF, for example, once you've scored it, or like you can break thin plastic materials. And that's true here as well. Now, if you want to just cut straight, you can just keep the blade angled straight and cut like this. But if you want to cut a curve, I would recommend to cut with an angled blade. So like this, for example. See, so I have a round curve here, and you can see it's not, I didn't cut completely through. But when I bend it now like this, see, it comes off. And the only thing that's still there is the paper that protects the glued surface. And obviously you don't need that one. So it's very, very easy to work with, to cut to pieces. And then if you want to go a step further and not use acrylic caulking for everything to reduce your material that you use here, especially with larger pieces, you can actually just use some paper or some cardboard. And I use rather thick one, so I thin it down a little bit. You can compress it, of course, a little bit, especially with double cardstock, to prevent you from having too high a slope, because you want to have the figures be able to stand very nicely on the edge of the terrain as well. So this is the first step really. You cut it to the size and the shape you want it approximately, and then if you want to build it up a little bit, you just use whatever material you can get your hands on. Like I said, paper is very nice because it retains then the bendy quality that you are looking for when you're using this material. And the next step is very simple. You take your caulking gun. I hope I don't murder your ears now with it. Okay, now it's ready to go. I hope the material is still enough in there because it's almost empty at this point. And then you just squeeze it out here. Yeah, like this. And I can feel already it's at the end of it. So I can't show it to you completely on this piece, but I can show you some how you work it. So this is the first part. And now you have to distribute it. And what I use normally for this is just a sculpting tool, like these plastic ones, very cheap from the art store. And you just wet it a little bit so the caulking doesn't stick to your tools. And then you can just smooth it down. See, it goes very easily. You don't need a lot of pressure. You just need to make sure that everything distributes nicely. And here some of it hardened up already a little bit, probably extra container, but it's fine. And in an ideal world, obviously I would cover all of it. Since I don't want to break up, open a new container, I will just leave it like that. So this is the first step, but obviously it's still not super smooth, as you can see. So you still have like rather unnatural looking shapes. And now you can use more water to smooth it down. Water always helps here a little bit. And if that doesn't work, there's another way of doing it, and that is just whack your finger, and that gives you even more control. And normally this would work even better, but as I mentioned before, I can feel it now as well. This has already partially cured this part here. But that's really unusual. It's the first time actually that it has happened to me. Normally if you put some plastic foil on top of the container, it stays usable for days, if not weeks. So no worries about that one. But you can see I have a rather smooth slope here already. And now that's actually the most time intensive part, like with a lot of terrain building pieces, the grind time. Because the top cures fairly quickly and creates a skin, but the problem is because you're putting a little bit thicker on, like the layers basically below are still not completely cured. So you want to give it at least 12 hours. But before you put it away for curing, one step you want to do is you want to already insert some structure. Because first you smooth it down, because the acrylic caulking itself creates rather unnatural looking structures. But you do want to have some structures because you will introduce it at one point anyway. And it's the easiest to do it right now. Because right now the acrylic caulking also has some gluey properties. So you can just sprinkle it on here. You don't need to cover everything, because in nature, at this scale, there are not rocks everywhere, except if you are in a rocky desert. And then you wet it a little bit and you push the stones, or the sand in this case, a little bit into the caulking. Because you want to create a nice coherent surface here. And the sand, when it's cured, it will provide enough structure so it doesn't look super boring and smooth. And I will show you what I mean by that. Because like a good TV cook, I've already prepared some steps. So this is what it looks like when it's cured. So you can see there are areas where we have a lot of sand, there are areas where there is no sand at all. It doesn't matter, it will look fine after all, trust the process. And the next step in this process is very simple. You paint it in the base color. And the base color for our project is raw sienna. I think this is a very nice tone for creating the base tone for soil. And then you just take a big brush. Generally terrain building lives off doing things. You need to cover big areas, so you need big brushes. So what I normally use is this one for smaller sketchy terrain. This is like a 20, and this is 60. And the other nice thing about these brushes is they are a bit more coarse, so they take a little bit more abuse before they really wear out. So I take the raw sienna and just paint on top of it. And you can hear maybe it's a bit scrapey because it rubs over the sand. So don't use an expensive paintbrush for it. It will just get ruined, and you don't need to have a good paintbrush for this. Any brush will do it really. So you cover everything in raw sienna. If you have the situation that the paint covers a little bit uneven, it doesn't matter too much. If you have some light spots shining through because it's in a recess, it doesn't matter either, we are going to wash it anyway. So you don't need to be super clean about it, just make sure you cover everything, and especially take notice of any of the black pieces from the vinyl flooring showing through, because there the paint sticks actually worse than on the acrylic caulking, which takes the paint quite nicely really, as you can see. And that's the next step. So very quick, very easy. Now after that, like I mentioned already, you want to wash the piece. And this is the next step. When it's dry, you can see it's a little bit uneven, maybe in terms of the color, but it doesn't matter. In the end, we do want to have a certain randomized unevenness on the piece anyway, because that's what makes it more believable. Nature does not have patterns that we humans recognize, and that's the whole point of making groundwork for the human eye. So what we do is we just take a wash, and in my case I still have wash from the project. I think it's like a dark gray and the sienna, and I also added something to break the surface tension. In my case I use actually vodka for it, because vodka is fairly cheap alcohol. Alcohol breaks surface tension. You can see already it's a little bit darker than the base tone that we have been using. We just dip the paintbrush in there and then brush over it, really cover the whole area so you don't have any piece that's left out. The paint will probably not distribute completely evenly over it, but again, like I said, you don't want to have a completely even coverage. This is just a heavy wash to get into the recesses and to build some gaps. So that's the next step. And thereafter, what comes after the wash? Always a dry brush. So I will get a different brush for this. With a close wash so we don't have an accident. And I use again, use big brushes. I use a makeup brush for dry brushing, and this is what it looks like when it's on the next stage. Apologies a little bit for the reflections you get. It's because the pieces are slightly glossy from the paint and from the acrylic caulking. I suspect as well plays a role. So we keep the raw sienna as a base color, and we add some lighter color to it. I use a sculpting tool to mix the paints a little bit. And now another important part. I mentioned it before, the human eye is designed to detect patterns. And one pattern that we detect very quickly are straight lines. So what happens when you load the brush rather heavily and you just dry brush in one direction, you might get streaking. And in order to avoid that, what I do with these kind of brushes is I just do circular motions. Because that way you will never build a pattern that will be recognizable easily. Because you have a very even coverage. And you have coverage from all sides as well. Because you're not really building this with directional lighting or anything in mind. So I'll just do like these rounds. Smooth from the wrist. And you can see here I actually have some streaking. Because I was a little bit careless. But I will just do it like this anyway. Can change the rotation that you're going through as well to cover both sides. Like this. And this dry brush can be very heavy. I mean, you want to pick out everything that is raised up. And if you have an area where you see that you really get no coverage at all from the dry brush color, just make conscious effort to cover that as well, because otherwise you do have a little bit too sharp contrast between what I had here before and the rest of the terrain piece. And that's really it already. I have here a dried piece. It looks like this. And the next step, I'm not going to show that to you because that's very much terrain building 101. I would apply some flock, and I use flock from Woodland Scenics because I like the foamy variant of flock. I'm not such a huge fan from the Saga version. And I have 3 different flocks in here and some finer cork to add a little bit more grittier structure to it. And I just put it on there, don't cover it completely because you've seen it before, the pieces, and I will put some pictures at the end as well. I do cover parts of it, and that's enough really to build immersion. And it doesn't need to be like super saturated either. And the thin layer is already quite good to give you the idea that you are looking at some kind of soil covered with plants. And then you seal everything with PVA glue or some other material that's suitable for sealing. Again, there are hundreds if not thousands of tutorials on YouTube how to seal a terrain piece, and the only thing I can say there is rather build one layer more than one layer less, because in the end if you have to repair the pieces it's not nice either. But like I said, what I really like about this material is it's very bendy. If it will not break on transport because it will bend rather than break. And if it bends a little bit on transport, you just bend it back. Very easy. The other aspect that you need to know, this tends to be a bit sticky. I have no idea why, because in the end there are multiple layers of paint on top of the acrylic caulking, but yet it remains a little bit sticky. That stickiness does go away a little bit more when you seal the whole material. It's a little bit a drawback, but I don't think it's a big drawback because it's not like super sticky, you just notice it a little bit. And I suspect also that the sticky property will go away over time. But yeah, that's it. That's how I built those basic bases. And I will show you that now, a couple of the thematic pieces, so the swamps, the ruins and so on, so you get an idea what you can do with those smaller bases. Because these pieces here, They're not like proper large Saga pieces, but they are rather either big as static terrain or as a kind of large sabo, if you might call it, or super sabo, whatever. And that's it. That's how I built my Saga Terra. And like I said before, I hope you enjoyed watching the process and maybe took some ideas from it, some inspiration from it for your next terrain building project. If you like this video, please leave a thumbs up, leave a comment if you have questions or remarks or suggestions for improvements. And if you generally like the content, please leave a subscription to the channel. And yeah, I hope you will come back to the next video. Until then, I wish you a good day, a good time in the hobby, and see you next time. Bye!